Hey everybody, it's Viv with Watercolor with Viv, and today we're going to do a dog's eye. I just thought you might want to see how to do the eye of an animal. On this one, I started out with a little yellow ochre. I'm just putting in a wet wash on dry paper. I've already sketched out everything. I always make a sketch first. I make it a little darker so y'all can see it, but when I'm painting for a customer or for myself, I don't make my pencil lines that dark. Then, after I get the wash in, I'm going to come back in with a little bit of raw sienna and go around the pupil. If you'll notice on eyes, animals' eyes, and human eyes too, right around the pupil is usually a little darker color. That's where the muscle of the iris is kind of all bunched up and tightened around that pupil. And it's also a little darker on the outer ring of the iris. And I'm going to put in some shadows right around the top of his eye. Your eyelid will cast a little bit of shadow over your eyes. Once I pull out these little striations here, I'll put a little shadow in the corner. And this particular dog has a little golden spot right there. Your eyelid hangs over your eyes, and animals' eyelids also hang over their eyes, so it's a little darker across the top, casting that shadow on the eye. And then I'm going to just take a little clear water and blend it out. Just kind of tap it when I'm blending this out. Bring a little darkness around the edge. Like I said, the outer ring of your iris is usually dark too, has a dark line. While that dries, I'm going to go over here and just put a little yellow ochre, but I got a little too much, so I'm going to pick some back up. I don't want it to be a big wet blob there. It could smear easily or leak. I'm putting the shadow across the top of this pupil from the eyelid. Now I think I'm going to start on the pupil. And I'm not using black. I usually use indigo, a little bit of Payne's gray, and some burnt umber. I don't like to use straight tube black. Some artists do. I don't really use black. I like to mix a really dark color because I find that tube blacks that are straight out of the tube are a little bit too flat looking. But if you mix some blues and browns together, it usually makes a really nice black. Now I'm going to come around and darken around the edge of the iris. And I'm just using a little burnt umber there. And as you can see, I've left the highlight white, and all those little yellow blobs all around on the paper is liquid masking fluid where I want to keep the lights. This dog is in the sunshine, and so he is full on sun straight in his face, and so there's a lot of really light areas, and I wanted to save those for later. Now I'm just kind of pulling up some striations from that ring. If you look at the iris is a muscle, and it has striations in it, and they're usually darker and lighter, and some are different colors. I'm going to put a shadow over this eye over here, and that's with that mixture of Payne's gray, indigo blue, and burnt umber. And I'm just going to paint in his eyelid with that mixture and pull it down. I think I need to darken his pupil just a little bit. I'm going to do the same over here. I'll make his pupil on this one a little dot. From the angle you can barely see that eye, but you can see it, so I'm going to keep darkening. See that right there? That is fluid, masking fluid that has dried, and I'm just painting around it, but I want that little piece in there to remain white. I don't know if you can really tell or distinguish it, but there is masking fluid there. And I'm going to peel it off and it'll be white underneath because that's the white of the pup's eye. Now I'm taking the same kind of mixture of the indigo and the burnt umber and a little bit of Payne's gray, and I'm just hatching. I don't know if you learned that in school. It's just little tiny lines you can hatch. I usually do it with pen and ink work, but you can do it with anything that you can paint or make a line with. Now right here in the corner of his eye he has some pink, so I've mixed some rose with a little bit of the Sienna, and I'm putting it in the corners of his eyes, and then just taking a brush with clear water and just blending it out. And now I'm just darkening up some areas where there's some shadows in the corners of his eye. And then taking water and blending it so that it's not such a harsh line. It's kind of a soft line. And darken around here a little bit more. Now I'm going to go to his eyebrow, at least that's what I'm calling it, his eyebrow, and just make those tiny little hair marks. Just hatch, hatch, hatch. And you want some areas to be darker. Really look at your reference photo and find out where the really dark areas are. Use a heavier touch there with more. And in the lighter areas, you just lightly do it, lightly touch, and just keep layering it, and it looks like hairs. Other people do it different. This is the way I do it. I like to do each little hair. Just there's something soothing about making those little hatch marks to me. But you find the way that you can do it the best, or what suits you. I'm just showing you my way. Now I'm removing all the masking fluid that's already dried, because I want to paint around here. Now that that's dried up there, I'm going back and layering over more darker marks. And go around the edge of his eyes. I haven't removed all of this masking fluid. You can still see the yellow of it. I'm adding a little bit more rose there because after it dried it just wasn't dark enough. Keep building up the corner of his eyes with the rose and the sienna, because he has a little pink at the corners of his eyes. I'm darkening up the shadow that's going across the top of his eyeball. Just kind of blending it down. Just adding in a little bit more of the striations. Now I'm going to continue with his fur around his eyes. Just to give me an idea of which way the fur is going, and try to go in the direction of the way the fur is growing. And if you really look at the dog or look at the reference that you're using, you can see which way. The dog's hair doesn't grow all in one direction. It goes in different directions depending on where the body part is. Now here I'm just adding a little light, a really watery mixture of cobalt blue, and putting it in some shadows that I'm going to let dry, and then I'm going to come back and crosshatch, but you'll be able to see the blue through the shadows. It just gives a little extra dimension. I'm letting that dry as I'm hatching in other spots. Whenever you paint, it's all about light and dark, light and dark. The shadows, the tones, the values. That's what makes your objects look three-dimensional on a two-dimensional sheet of paper, is your shadowing and your tones, light and dark. You're always thinking about that when you're painting. Where is it light? Where is it dark? Where are the shadows? Where are the highlights? And trying to see the colors in them. This one's fairly simple. I'm just using a couple of colors with this pup. His eye is just yellow ochre, sienna, burnt umber. His fur is just a little cobalt blue under painting, and then for the fur marks, it's just the indigo, Payne's gray, and burnt umber mixture. And some of it's a little watery or mixture, and then the thicker on top to make it layered and darker. And you can already see that eyeball coming out of there. Each layer just brings it more and more to life. That's what I love about painting. There we go. I'm going to add a little more blue underpainting here. And I'm bringing it up into the fur marks I've already made to kind of soften it. And as you see, it kind of made it bleed a little bit. I don't want just harsh fur marks all over my whole puppy's face. And I'm going to let that dry. And when it dries, I'm going to come back over and do the little hatch marks. Trying to follow the way that the puppy's fur is growing. I'm just doing it over, just right over it, and I just love the way that the blue shows through. In between each one of those hatch marks. And you'll see I'm doing it darker there, and I've left the area in front with not as many hatch marks to indicate the light. Painting is just a matter of steps. It's just steps. Making decisions and then going through the steps that it's going to take you to get to where you want to be. And you just have to think about how are you going to get there. Now I'm going to take a little bit of a watery mixture of the indigo and the burnt umber and the Payne's gray and do some solid shadowing. I'm just doing it on dry paper around his ear and to the side of his face. I don't want a uniform wash. I want it to have some dark and light spots, kind of indicate how the light's flowing over his contours of his face. I'm painting around the masking fluid, keeping it there because I want to keep the highlights there. He's got 2 highlights on his cheek. it doesn't have to be an even wash because I'm again going to come over it with some hatch marks. But I want that to be a darker shadow because his face is starting to turn there. Just to kind of blend it, I'm making little hatch marks out while it's still wet so that it won't just be harsh lines there. I already have a little hatch going on. Now I'm almost finished with showing you this part because it's basically the same technique, just shadowing and hatch marks, laying down glazes and hatch marks. The eye is pretty simple. I showed you that at the beginning. I'm going to remove some more of the masking fluid to reveal some more highlights so I can work on those. Before you remove any of your masking fluid, make sure that your paint is dry, because if you try to remove it and your paint's still wet, you're going to smear your paint everywhere. So make sure the paint's dry before you use your little tool or your finger or whatever it is that you use to remove masking fluid with. That's just a good tip right there. I'm going to come in and finish this eye, darkening it back up around the edges again. On that lower lid, I'm just getting a little shadow from the top. His top lid is throwing a little bit of a shadow on his bottom lid. I'm just going to continue to do hatch marks. I don't want it too dark in here because it's a highlight and the sun is hitting right on this area, so we want to keep it light. So basically it's an easy technique to do. The main thing is watch out for highlights, lights, and darks. Hatching technique, it's limited colors. If you want to find out more or more tutorials like this, go to vivsart.com and check out my blog. It has a lot of information on there, and there's different tutorials that you might find interesting. And just continue to darken the areas where the shadows are. And each layer just makes it come alive. All right, I think you get the idea now. Thanks for watching. Check out my art at vivsart.com. And let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have any questions, ask them. And there's the finished eye. And there's the finished dog. Such a cutie pie. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.